Here are 10 things you need to do in your first 30 to 60 days of a product management role and why you should do them. Number one is to use your product. Get a trial account, get your product documentation, and follow that documentation from the start to the end and see how you go with setting up and actually using your product. This will give you a really good idea of what your customer experience is as customers request features and they report problems. Because you have used your product, you will really understand what they are talking about, and you need to be the product expert, and that starts with, first and foremost, really intimately understanding your product. Now, this isn't going to be something you just do once and forget. I recommend jumping into your product and spending as much time as possible as you can over the course of many months. But I think on your second day, on your third day, like, this should be a top priority for something you do. Number two is use your competitor products. Find 3 to 5 competitors to your product and try to get access to their products, hopefully via some kind of trial account. And do the same thing that you did with your product. Get a trial account, get access to their product documentation, go through the end-to-end process of setting it up. And by doing this for a few different competitive products, you'll start to get a really good grasp of what the competitive and market landscape looks like. And you'll start to find similarities and differences and limitations and different observations like that between your product and your competitor products. And this is really important in a product management role, to understand and always be on top of what is happening in the market and what your competitors are doing. Number 3 is to answer customer support tickets. That's right, I don't think anyone is too good or too big to do this. If you spend a little bit of time with your customer support team, you can shadow them and you can see how they are dealing with customer tickets, or you can actually take on some yourself, and you can get a really good understanding of what kind of questions customers are asking, what issues they are reporting, what feature requests they have, and basically what kind of situations your customer support team is having to deal with because of your product. They are really that gatekeeper between you and the product. Again, in the early days, it's about you putting yourself in the shoes of the customer. And one of the best ways to do that is to deal head on with what kind of issues customers are dealing with, and figuring out how you can help them, because that helps you understand the product, it helps you understand potential solutions, it also helps you understand where there are no solutions. You might have to suggest workarounds, and these are all things that can help you figure out what your future product roadmap might look like. Okay. Number 4 is to review existing customer feedback. Now, depending on your company and your product and your processes, there are many different ways in which you can find out customer feedback. Again, one is through your customer support team. They should already have some customer feedback that is available for an existing product. You can also look at the public forums of your product or your company. If there is product documentation, customers are often leaving a bunch of questions and requests on that documentation. If you have some kind of tool that you use in your company to collate feedback, you can browse through that. But basically, if you start browsing through all of the different feedback customers have ever given you, this is again going to help inform you of what your future product roadmap can look like. I think sometimes PMs can put a lot of pressure on themselves to come up with the cool new ideas and things that the roadmap should include. But I think ultimately it is whatever your customers are already telling you, and hopefully you have some of that information already available. And if you don't, number 5 will be useful, which is to get on customer calls. Now, it can be really intimidating to get on a customer call when you are new and not that familiar with the product. But the approach that I suggest here is to really play the newbie card. Talk to customers and tell them, hey, I am a new product manager. I'm going to be looking after this product. I want to hear about how you use it. I want to hear about what's not working for you. Give me your wish list. You can use your newbie card to really extract as much information as you want from the customer. You don't need to go into this call knowing everything. You're using this almost like as a research call, and you're using it as a way to build relationship and a rapport with some particular customers. So definitely do that. And this is another form of collecting customer feedback. Number 6 is to review your existing product backlog. Now, chances are if this is an existing product, you will not only have feature requests and general customer feedback, but you'll have a long list of backlog items that the team has been collecting over some period of time. These could be little bugs, these could be little engineering tasks, tech debt, UI enhancements, big features. This is just like the exhaustive list of everything you could do for your product. So you want to start getting pretty familiar with what is in the backlog, again, just to get a general sense of the state that things are in. Are there a lot of bugs? Are there just lots of little UI fixes? Are there only really big features to be developed? Like, you know, what is the state of your backlog? And you can kind of start categorizing the backlog into different epics or categories or whatever you see fit, but you really want to know, as a product manager, what is the state of your product backlog. Number 7 is to spend time one-on-one with engineering to understand the technology of your product. So you want to spend time with engineering, obviously, just to develop a good relationship with them, but you really want to focus on understanding how the product is built. You want to show engineering that you don't just care about the outcomes of the product and the functionality that it delivers, but you care about how it's built. This is really what's going to help build a good relationship between you and engineering. I would recommend spending time with your engineering team either as a whole or one-on-one, with a whiteboard or a virtual whiteboard, and getting them to draw out how the product works. This is diagrams, pictures, architecture blocks, like whatever it is, just get them to explain how things work and why they work or why they are built that way. And engineers typically love explaining how things work, so this is good for them in order to explain to you, and it's also good for you to learn how the product works, build that relationship with them, but also to ask questions about why and how. And there are no stupid questions, trust me. Showing your engineering team that you actually care about how the product is built and not just the functionality and features that it delivers is really key, is really critical to having a good relationship with engineering. But you also will benefit a lot as you understand the behind the scenes of how the product actually works. Make sure you ask questions about why certain technical decisions were made, why do you use this particular tech stack, why does data flow from hair to hair instead of hair to hair. Like, ask all those questions. And again, you can play on your newbie card here because you are new to the product and you genuinely don't know why. Engineering will probably also give you a lot of feedback and information about what they think we should be focusing on with the roadmap. And you can talk to customers and get that from customers' perspective, but you can also take into account engineering's perspective. If they're telling you, hey, we think the product's actually going to fall apart in 6 months because we have too many customers using it, that's something important for you to know and important for you to consider. Number 8 is actually something you shouldn't do in your first 30 to 60, even 90 days, and that is not to change things too quickly. So if you are going into an existing team which has an existing product, chances are that you're just going to slot right into what they already do. They might be operating on 2 weekly sprints. They might already have all of their different agile ceremonies in place. And I think it's really important to go in and first observe and understand what those different processes are, why the team has those processes, and over time try to understand if as a team there are certain things worth improving. Rather than coming in as someone new to the team, you want to make your mark, you want to make a good impression, but it can be dangerous to disrupt the way the team already works. And it's important to do that gradually, and it's important to do it for the right reasons. So for example, if your team is planning for 2-week sprints, but you're actually finding that they never complete the sprint, like ever, then that's something you should talk about in a retrospective and think about perhaps why you're not completing the sprint. Is it because you're putting too many items in the sprint? Is it because estimations are really off? Is it because we don't have the team capacity quite right? Is it because requirements aren't specific enough, so we're never quite sure how long something is going to take? There are lots of questions you can ask and formulate any changes you make, I think, collaboratively with the team. I think we can all agree that we don't like when someone new joins a company or a team and they just come in and they change something. Like, No, you need to understand what's going on first before you change something. And number 9 is to understand your product metrics. To understand would be product adoption. So how many customers are using your product, and maybe who are specifically the top customers, like identify them by name. Secondly, how are they using your product? Like, what are their usage patterns? Are there certain features or functionality that is being used way more than others? And why is that the case? Are you able to segment your customer list and understand how different segments use different features? How much money is your product bringing in, and who is that money coming from? So attributed revenue, so revenue or attributed revenue is also important to understand how your product is monetized. Maybe even, you can even look at things like churn. How many customers are churning from your product? And then you can really dive into why those customers are churning. Are there problems that you could consider solving to prevent customers from churning? Now, there are a bunch of other metrics you could look at, but it's really going to depend on what your product is. For example, if your product is an app, you could look at the number of app downloads you have. You could then compare that to the number of people who download the app versus actually set up the app, so on and so forth. But the basics are really who is using the product, how many of them are there, and how are they using it in terms of usage. And last but not least, number 10 is to release something small. Now, when I say something small, it could be a small feature, it could be a bug fix, it could be a UI improvement, it could really be anything, but the point is for you in your first 60 or so days to really start solidifying your understanding of the product and your team's processes and your development and product processes. Prioritizing what is something you could release, coming up with the requirements for it, maybe coming up with a design for it in collaboration with your designer, sharing those requirements and design with your engineering team, seeing how they take that through the development process, testing that yourself, understanding how you release this to customers, update documentation, etc. So I think releasing something will give you a really good understanding of the whole process, and then over time you can obviously start building on those small releases to something much, much bigger. So there are some ways in which you can spend your first 30 to 60 days as a product manager in a new team or for a new product in a new company. That's it. And that is it. Those are some ways in which you can spend your first 30 to 60 days as a product manager working on a new product, in a new team, maybe in a new company. I really hope that was valuable, and if you do have any questions related to this, please leave them in the comments. Also, please like this video if you did get some value from it, and please subscribe if you haven't already. I release new videos every single week and shorts multiple times a week, and I will see you in my next video.